Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome back to Adventure Capital, where we not only discuss the entrepreneurial journeys and adventures with founders who have raised capital on Wefunder, but also the different resource providers and mentors helping founders along the way. Huzzah! In this interview, we chat with Tony Gapastione and Edward Portillo of the 33 Days film, a cinematic experience based on the true story of a man bringing hope to San Francisco's homeless community. Before we get on with the podcast, we're required to let everyone know that anything we say here should not be interpreted as investment advice, recommendations, or soliciting investments in any company. All companies raising on Wefunder are given an equal opportunity to participate in the podcast based on the progress of their campaign. Wefunder gang, take it away.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Adventure Capital. I am very delighted today to be joined by Tony Gapastione and Edward Portillo, who are the masterminds behind the movie 33 Days Later. Guys, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Jonny.
Jonny, I love that you attempted the British Italian pronunciation of
Gapastione.
My last. That was wonderful.
How should I have said it?
That's great. Gapastione. All of the Americans say Gapastone. So, but I like the Italian with the hands up in the air. That's great.
Gapastione.
Gapastione.
I actually studied Italian for a year at university. Little known fact about me. So I got that little E.
Every vowel. You got every vowel. And but you pronounced our film name wrong. It's 33 days.
Well, that's funny. You can't get everything. You can't get everything perfect. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Does that happen a lot? What's that other movie?
I think 33 Days Later is like the zombie movie.
I was gonna say
is it actually 33 days as well?
I think it's 28 days later.
28 days later.
Yeah, that's right.
Some number of days later is, the movie we're talking about here. Ed, you've got the poster behind you. I should have just read it off there. But well, what an interesting start to this podcast. Thanks so much for joining me. Let's start by you guys maybe introducing yourselves, kind of a little bit of your background, how you came to be making movies, from there we can get into Brave Maker and 33 Days without the later.
Yeah, I guess I've been really doing projects creatively out of high school. It was doing sketch comedy. It was doing short films. It was doing things for the church that I was going to, all up into college and into graduating. And so started doing some more short films in theater. And we connected, Tony and I, on actually sketch comedy. So he booked me for my sketch comedy team, and that's how we initially connected. And we kind of bounced off this idea together. We were actually at a coffee shop in Hollywood. And I was telling him, hey, I got this idea for making a film based on a true story of this guy in San Francisco. And immediately Tony's like, well, I can make this happen. I can get this. I can call a person to help make a meeting. I'm like, well, it's just an idea. I don't know. It's like, no, let's go. Let's move forward. So that's a little bit a snapshot, but Tony can get into his story as well. But that's how we connected.
Didn't you come up to work on a project volunteering with me from LA to the Tenderloin first? Wasn't that how you got connected?
No, I was actually doing sketch comedy in Santa Cruz. And then I came over to have coffee with you around that area in Redwood City. And I said, hey, this is what I'm doing just to reconnect. And you're like, hey, why don't you come back in 2 weeks to this conference for this organization called City Impact? I can get you a place to stay. And it's free. I got the tickets. It's in San Francisco. I was like,
yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, okay, I'm just remembering it. Okay, yeah, totally. All right. Well, my background is acting as well, and I was a pastor on a staff, and I booked Ed to come, and we hit it off. It was great. But it wasn't until I went to Sundance Film Festival in 2013 that I was ignited to start making films myself. I'd always sort of just been, quote unquote, an actor, waiting around for someone else to book me. into their films, and you wait around a long time and you go on a lot of auditions and get rejected a heck of a lot. And I got tired of rejection. So I just thought, let me just start making my own film. So I made my own short film in 2014.
Were you acting in them as well?
I was, yes.
There you go. So you create a job for your
Create
Tony
your own
the actor.
opportunity. That's right.
If you want a job doing, Tony, do it yourself.
Do it yourself. Gosh. And that has
really
been like my motto, my mentality is stop waiting and do, right? So I did a bunch of short films. Ed and I started, working on this 33 days idea and option it with the author and the guy who actually lived the 33-day hunger strike that we'll talk about later. And we've been doing this for almost 8 years, like 8 years. In the meantime, I made my own other feature film. I just made a feature film that came out this year, and I'm doing the film festival circuit and working on a bunch of other film and TV and pitching things in LA. And meanwhile, we said, okay, same thing. We were waiting around for a long time to get people to make this movie, and we said, let's just take it into our own hands. Let's start a Wefunder, and here we are.
I love it. And yeah, I mean, maybe we should start with this story. 33 days or 33 days later, whichever we want to go with for this podcast. But yeah, tell us about the movie and the story. It's a really amazing one.
So Ed was talking about how he came to this conference. And I told you I was a pastor in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I would go and volunteer in the Tenderloin, which I always tell people is just an under-resourced, vulnerable 1 square mile space in the city of San Francisco. People who know the LA area, everyone knows like that, those 2 words, Skid Row. It's just a place that is really needing of love and care. And this guy, Roger Huang, came over from Taiwan in the early 80s, and his life was destined, he thought to be a mogul in the hotel industry, but his heart started to break for the kids of the Tenderloin and the families that were just being oppressed by unjust systems. And he decided not to climb the hotel ladder and started passing out free sandwiches. And, cut to, in film terms, he started a school and a church, a rescue mission, and a medical clinic that hundreds of thousands of people like myself and Ed have volunteered in for free. In fact, we've paid to volunteer by going to these conferences and stuff. And he wrote a book, and it was in our hands, and they're like, we love what's going on here. And this is a story that needs to be told about a guy who kind of also said, I'm going to do a hunger strike for 33 days in front of City Hall in 2004 because the city still was sort of overlooking, not sort of, they were wildly overlooking the crime and the injustices happening there. And 33 days later, they gave in to a lot of his demands to clean the city, that, the Tenderloin up. And that's the story we're telling.
And there's something really cinematic about that. So part of what was great about going to that conference that Tony invited me to is that everybody that attended was given a book because it just had come out. And so I kind of devoured it at home. And this hunger strike was only like maybe a page and a half of the book, but it just struck me that this is something really remarkable. And that you think of one of the most, cosmopolitan cities in the world, really, certainly in America, that he was able to move bureaucracy in 33 days. There's something really important about that. There's something that says, there's a spiritual aspect about it where it almost asks you, maybe there's something bigger here at work. And so those kind of things that we wanted to examine. And so we wanted to use that story of the 33 days as the anchor, the narrative anchor, and then interweave his life story. So the audience has gone through this journey of why is he willing to give up his life potentially for the people of the Tenderloin? What was it that gave him purpose or gave him this inspiration to do this thing on behalf of the people of the Tenderloin? And so that was kind of where we started our pitch, and it kind of snowballed into what we're doing now here at Wefunder and the continued raise that we've done. But it's also a project that throughout this whole process, through the start of the pandemic, we were like, okay, great, what are we gonna do, guys? But Tony came in and was like, well, let's work on the script. Let's really workshop it. Let's not work, let's not lose momentum, and then we workshop the script more. We got actors to come and read the script, and so we had some momentum, and then that was the catalyst to getting on the Wefunder, and then that really kind of moved into another dimension when we started really launching it and getting the word out there to people that really seemed to get interested in it and wanted to invest in the project.
I love it. As you've kind of been working on the movie, this is kind of a separate tangential question, I guess, but is there any large life lessons that have hit you? Like you were talking there, Ed, about like what motivated this person to, go on hunger strike for 33 days for the people of the Tenderloin. Like, yeah, what are there any kind of life lessons that have struck you guys?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say the first life lesson is, and then when I was actually meeting Roger, so I read the book and then I was able to get closer to Roger, and I actually started working at City Impact at the ministry that he ran, initially as a driver, and I was just throwing out the garbage really. And then I got moved into promoted, as you will, as the manager of the rescue mission. And so I was able to see firsthand the life-changing work that was happening. And really what changed me as I was working there was eliminating myself. It sounds kind of like counterintuitive, but it was like the more that I was in dependence of, in my faith in God, the more I was like saying I came to like a more of a need to like, because I was constantly hitting brick walls. I was constantly in a really tough place. When you're serving in a Tenderloin or working in a Tenderloin, it's a very hard place to often find motivation and to continue working there. And so I think that was, in emptying yourself, you really find your purpose. You really find you get your strength, your inner strength. And so that also dovetails into working on this film, because I had this background of producing. I had this background on really bringing big ideas to life. And it was in that time where I was at my lowest, really working at City Impact, even though it was so affirming and I gained so much, is where the opportunity for the film came kind of back into focus, where it was like, okay, maybe that was part of what I needed to grow in and learn as a person, to have that inner strength and that, to go through that, to take a project like producing a film. Because as we, might get into, it's like producing film is one of the most difficult things in the whole entire world. It's, it's a constant challenge. As you talk to other entrepreneurs too, as well. It's always a challenge, but specifically with film, it's definitely something that is needed, some inner strength. And I think that was certainly a life lessons that I learned while I was at City Impact and during this process.
What about you, Tony?
I would add to that, just the whole underdog story of Roger is that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And I don't like the word broken, but that's a really common vernacular of how we describe, like, we don't have to have it all together, right? Roger came from a very abusive family of origin. And in fact, that's what motivated his heart to soften toward these kids and to the families of the Tenderloin. He was abused at the hand of his dad for his whole life, to the point of, death at points. And he was running from that. And sometimes the things that you're running for are the things that sometimes could be used to do some of the most goods, like that story of his flight from Taiwan to San Francisco, then being connected to all the beautiful, wonderful things that he built. So I just, the life lesson for me is I don't have to have it all together. Roger is not a perfect person. He's the protagonist. He's the hero, but he will always be the first to say he's a guy, he's experienced so much trauma in his life. He's got so many things that he's had to put together, and he's honest about it. I am who I am. And I think in this day and age, we're filming or recording this on the last week of May 2022. America has gone through a huge trauma in Texas, in Buffalo, New York. We are holding lives lost senselessly. And I think about that phrase, thoughts and prayers. Well, we have to do something. We have to stand up and speak up. And Roger did that. He did that with his life. He did that with his work, and he did that politically as well. So we can't just sit back and hope other people are going to do the work for us. Just like we talk about making a film, you can't just hope someone's going to make your dream come true. Get off your butt and do something about it. And I like that that life lesson from Roger. Like I can't just make a post on Instagram and hope that kids are going to keep living and being able to go to school freely. No, I got to do something about it myself. What will it be? So,
yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. It's really, really interesting. You guys, speaking of making the movie, you guys, so you raised 165 grand on Wefunder, 82 investors. About a year ago, you wrapped up the round. What took you down the direction of raising on Wefunder? It's, more and more, producers are choosing to raise capital in this way, but it's still like, it's pretty rare for movies to raise capital, from the community and on an online platform like this. So what was the kind of trigger that made you guys go down this route?
Jonny, I need to shout out my friend Jim Cummings, filmmaker Jim Cummings, and Spencer Fulmar, two filmmakers who both raised. I think at the time when we started, there was like, I want to say 8, 12. Those two numbers are in my mind. So there wasn't a lot of filmmakers doing it. And we're so, the filmmaking community is so familiar with crowdsourcing, crowdfunding.
From
right?
Kickstarter and Indiegogo.
Correct. Indiegogo, Seed and Spark, give us money for free, And I think, both Ed and I have done so much of this and raised money in those other spaces that you exhaust your network in some way. And so I remember I met Jim at Sundance. We worked on a film together, and I watched him do so much of this. And he said, just do it on Wefunder. Then I talked to my friend Spencer. So I brought it to our team. I said, while we're waiting, 8 years later, that's the name of our next film. 8 years later, let's do something. Let's raise money with this platform called Wefunder. And so I just credit it to the people who've done it before and passed it on to us. And there you go.
How was the? Well, go ahead, Ed.
I was just gonna say, the only thing I would add to is that one of the things that was surprising is some members of our team was like, well, if we let the genie out the bottle, as it were, if we tell everybody what we're doing and it doesn't immediately come out, or it doesn't meet, then we're losing the heat. We're losing, so let's be strategic on when we do it. And so that was one of the conversations that we had. But when we launched it, that was when we really see how much buy-in the people have. How much is this really something that people want to see? Is this something that has momentum? And so it was kind of the opposite. It was like really the thing that in our minds, we're like, we've done everything, we've called everything, we had meetings, we pitched this person, pitched that person. But in reality, it's like you're really just beginning. It was one of the great, points where we said, okay, there is an audience here. They really are interested. This is more than beyond our friends and family. And so this was really a great thing to accomplish, to say this is something that we need to push forward to continue, because the audience, their heat is there, as it were, to continue to see it through.
And what was the experience like? And you've raised money in other ways. I'm curious how it compares to like a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. I'm curious how it compares to like, raising investment capital from, more conventional angel investors. I think the term angel investor first came from the movie industry, actually. I think that's right. So yeah, how was the Wefunder experience, versus other approaches to raising capital?
My response to that would be with the simple phrase of, you could get your money back. That is just something we don't have in the other spaces when you're raising money for a movie. And that gave it a different twist. We were able to kind of start different conversations with different people who might not have been interested before. So that's like, for me, it was just as much work, right? Ed and I every week would do a live stream where we would talk, we would shout out our investors, we would talk about what's happening. It's a job. It's another job, raising money. And so all that stuff was the same, but just that one little difference of saying, this is an investment that you could recoup.
Totally. Average, I don't know how this relates for movies specifically, but for the average Kickstarter campaign, that stats on their page, at least the last ones I saw, say 25K is the average Kickstarter campaign, and the average backer is putting in $80, whereas on Wefunder, the average is $1,000. Actually, you guys are above average. It's almost $2,000, I think. And the average Wefunder is now raising 400 grand. So yeah, basically when you say yes, you can get your money back. Maybe an upside here. You can just get people to write larger checks.
Yeah.
How did you do it? Like, was it a lot of meetings with friends and family, or people you've worked with down the years? Like, what tactics did you employ to raise the 160K?
Well, I would say, one of the things that's really great about the experience of raising on Wefunder, and also did help us with the strategy of how we would continue to raise, is that, we created people. We're big on vision. We're big on creativity.
Right.
We're big on like, hey, it looks great. The presentation piece looks awesome, and everything on paper looks amazing. But the finances, you're like, let me get back to you. Let me work on that. Let me try to. Okay, I know but what WeFunder does for creative people is it puts it all out there. You have to have everything in order. And so your visual pitch deck and your financial plan is up there already.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always use that as like your North Star. Even in other places, you always have that there to always show that's all that information is there. So that was huge to get more people and open up more doors. Because we would meet with people and we would have, dinners and things like that. And we would tell them and we show them, but it's a different thing when you actually have this really great presentation piece on this site that we can point to. So yeah, a lot of it was the live streams that we were doing. We actually did a Q&A with the investors to see if anybody had any questions as we were moving closer. We did different things like the early bird investor. We did that where we got more people involved and excited about it. We also did some things where we had, what did we do? I think one of the things that was great is that we tried to get more people that were like-minded. So people that were from different church groups or Asian American groups. So to try to get to more people, we did do, this was another interesting thing. We did do marketing, and we were told not to necessarily work on marketing because we're raising kind of a little bit amount of money. You don't really know. But this gentleman that was from your network reached out to us. I just think his name is Christian, and he said, I am a believer. I come with a faith background, and I really haven't seen a project like this, so I'm willing to do it at a discounted rate just to see. And what we ended up seeing was that demographic that he was going after, even though people did invest, it wasn't the return that he thought it was going to be because he felt that they had to be more educated. And so, which is fine. It makes sense. We understand. But it was a great experience to work with him. And he was very gracious. So that was another angle as well. But it was definitely a lot of people that were opening up to, we also had a mailing list as well that I've been honing on since 2010. I have like a 800 per person mailing list that I've been emailing to constant updates and things like that. So it's really just kind of engaging our audience and building off of that.
I want to shout out to Megan Phil, who came on as an investor. She invested and liked the project so much. She said, hey, what else can I do? And so then she started spreading the WeFunder link. And then she started joining us on our Thursday live stream to ask us questions, kind of facilitating like
really
what
cool.
you're doing. So that was cool. And you can call it whatever, a brand ambassador or champion, but I think that was a really cool part that I think every project could benefit from. Someone who's maybe not directly benefiting from the project, but who believes in it enough to say, hey, I'm an investor and here's why you should too. I know that's part of the WeFunder thing is you find that special person who takes it on, and she didn't even realize that that's what she was doing, but that really helped us out a ton.
Yeah. I love it. Some really good kind of tactics and strategies in there. So you raised some money a year ago. How's everything been going since then?
A year later. This is so, unfortunately typical in the film industry, but you're constantly navigating. We joked about how hard it was for us to record this podcast, 3 different reschedulings. Well, with our film, we've had, 3 different hoped for start dates of production, but we now have a partner in Taiwan that we are building, and we're now having this kind of, international relationship with a grant writer, with a producer there who's writing grants on our behalf. and we've gotten some other funding that's come from some other places. So we just kind of keep moving the needle a little bit farther. We keep having to tweak things in the script. It's never fully done until it's done, kind of thing. Or what's that phrase? You don't really finish it till you abandon it. So we were hoping we're going to be in production in the fall. That now probably realistically is now beginning of 2023. So we're still doing a little bit more raising in some private spaces and waiting for some more greener lights, I guess you could say. Ed, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've raised now over 300K to date that we have in the bank. Our co-producer is based in Singapore, and he's connected to us to another production company in Taiwan that is working on the grants. And so it made sense to make this an international production. Once we connected to our co-producer in Singapore, who helped is really a shepherd in a lot of ways of saying this would be a great place to film in Taiwan. The gentleman who wrote the book is from Taipei. There's grant opportunities available. And so let's work and see these things through. And then once we kind of get some secured some grants, then we can get some more money around that as well. So that's why it's taking a little bit of time. We were kind of expecting that maybe this would happen this year, but of course with the grant process and everything, putting it all together, getting all your dots and crossing the T's and I's, that takes some time to get everything together. But that's the plan right now. As it stands, we would do early quarter one of 2023.
Are your so you have, I think it's 82 investors on the Wefunder. Have any of them said, what's taking so long, or kind of been on your back about it, or are they being,
I think we had one, Jonny.
Okay.
But again, there's, some people recognize that film takes forever, and they know that from a audience perspective when they watch the interview with the actors, and they look radically different because they filmed that thing 4 or 5 years ago, right? It really is a marathon. It's so different than a startup, than a company. Making a film really does take a long time. I mean, Ed wasn't married, and now he's married with 2 children. When we
there's
first
also
started
this thing called COVID that's been going on in the world over the last year or two. So I'm sure that's been pretty disruptive as well, especially with the kind of East Asia connections.
Well, that was one thing when we were thinking we might be in production earlier. At one point, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, the Taiwan protocol was we would have to quarantine for 2 weeks before in Taiwan shooting, and then 2 weeks after before we would be allowed to leave or something like that. So we're like, wow, like I was like, I have 3 kids. How am I going to be away from them from an extra month on top of the month of shooting? So yeah, so it's kind of going to work out hopefully when things loosen up and we actually get to film and we don't have to quarantine for a month or something.
What Ed, you mentioned earlier, you're kind of creative people, and the page looks amazing, right? The photography, the narrative, it's really you can tell that you guys are very, very good at making movies. But on the financial side, how's the investment structured? Like if I invest $1,000 in 33 days, how do I get my money back?
Yeah, the way that it's structured is really goes at first money in, first money out, if you have the waterfall. So usually that goes into who's selling the movie, the distribution company, everything that kind of comes with the people that came in the last. They're the ones that get all their money back. And then as the waterfall goes down, it goes into the investors, which will get 110% back from their investment. And then depending on where it goes, so if it goes to streaming, usually the deal is structured. It's a one-time deal. Everybody gets paid out. And then the streaming service has an in perpetuity. If it does go on theatrical, and that's, preferably, every filmmaker wants to have their movie on the silver screen, then there's an opportunity for in perpetuity for the profits to be split 50-50 between the investor pool and the producing pool.
Got it. So it's like, you get prioritized return, you get your 110% back first, and then ongoing, there's also kind of split royalties going forward as well. Right.
Unless you're the early bird investor, which is a great thing that Wefunder has, 120%.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess so. You talked about lessons, life lessons from like the story and immersing yourself in the story of this pastor and his this kind of incredible thing that he did. More kind of mundane, maybe more kind of tangible lessons about, you know, if you were advising you know, fellow producers making a movie on running a Wefunder campaign. What's one or two lessons you learned, you know, maybe if you were to do it again for another movie in the future, you might approach it differently?
I'm proud of the work that we did. Honestly, I think when I think of what would we do differently, just try to raise more money. But we put a lot of work and strategy into it. It's humbling asking for money. So I guess to all of you all who are considering it, it's maybe a little less humbling when you can tell people you're gonna pay them back. Yeah, that's your hope, right? So I think WeFunder is that level up. Now, I would say if you are a filmmaker that hasn't ever raised money for any project before, get some practice doing it, because too many people fail at raising because they think, you know, I'm going to put a link on my social media and voila.
Totally.
That's not it at
Right.
all.
100%.
So adjust your expectations. And I feel our team, which is four people, we had the right expectations and we knew what we had to get done. And everybody sort of has a little niche of the private, you know, people who are emailing and asking the one-on-ones. And then we had, you know, some parties where we talked it and we did some, you know, cocktail things and we showed our teaser trailer. So you have to do all of that on top of the WeFunder link and sharing it and consistently getting it before people so they can press that donate or that invest link, you know?
Yeah, I'd add to that is there's two things for me too. One is that you have to have the long view. You have to go into it knowing that on average an independent film takes 8 to 12 years to be filmed. I think that I've heard that stat. Don't quote me on exactly, but I think it's 8 to 12 years for it to actually come to fruition. And so having that long view really means that you have to celebrate the little teensy smallest accomplishments, because you're going to get constant no's. You're going to get in this lull. You're going to be vacillating between good, bad, good. You know, you're going to have to manage your expectations and celebrate those things. If it's somebody emailing you back, if it's somebody that calls you back, if it's somebody that, you know, hey, a friend saw the post and, oh, I didn't know you're doing a movie. You know, those are the type of things that you're going to have to, as a filmmaker, have that inner strength so you can continue to move forward, because it's just such a slog sometimes. And when you think that you're climbing the mountain and you've been climbing the mountain, when you realize that you're really just picking out the guide to get you up the mountain, you know, that a lot of times that's the perspective about having that long-term vision. And I said this number two is really the team. A lot of people are like, they want to do everything. It's like, I am the end all be all. I'm the greatest editor. I'm the greatest director. I'm the greatest actor. I'm the great, you know. If you really focus on a team who is really good at directing, who is really good at producing, who is really good at acting, you know, if you really work in like the dynamic interpersonally. I mean, fortunately, you know, Tony and I hit it off early prior to us even starting to do a producing, working together, producing wise. And so that is so important. It's so important that you work with the people that you want to work with, and it's also part of that long-term vision that you're willing to go, you know, arm in arm into battle oftentimes with this person. I think that's really important to keep in mind, is like, what is the team that you're surrounding yourself with? And if you find a flaw or a couple flaws, or that person's kind of annoying, but they're a great editor, oh, that person's really annoying, but they're an awesome director. Well, then you got to rethink, like, maybe I got to really go with somebody that I can really align myself with, and then that we can ride it in together.
Love it.
Good words, Ed.
Yeah. And yeah, your guys' kind of relationship and chemistry is really kind of cool to see, obvious to see. And yeah, I'm sure stands you guys in very, very good stead for this project, and hopefully many others to come. It's been really, really awesome. This is such a fun conversation. It's kind of a little different to the boring B2B SaaS founders that we normally have on the podcast. So yeah, thanks so much for taking the time. I'm glad we finally managed to make it happen. And yeah, hopefully for other movies down the line, we might get to work together again. Tony and Edward Gapastione also one last time. It's been great having you here. Thanks so much for coming on, guys.
Absolutely. Go to visit our site at 33daysfilm.com and keep informed on what we do, because it'll be coming soon. Hopefully to a theater near you.
Love it. 33daysfilm.com, or in my version, 33dayslaterfilm.com.
That's the sequel. That's the sequel. We'll be raising on Wefunder in 2023. No, seriously though, if you want to reach out to us on that site, please do, or on Instagram, we're 33daysfilm too. DM us. We would love to help other people with any questions from people who've used Wefunder to raise money for a film. We're happy to be a resource if you need it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah. You're the best.
Thanks, Jonny.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Adventure Capital. I hope you laughed, took notes, shed a tear, and most importantly, feel ready to go off on your own adventure. And remember, whenever you're ready, Wefunder's here to help. Be sure to like and leave a review, gang.